welcome to this week's edition of World Today, where we'll be focusing on why India decided to engage China despite the massive escalation at the border and the first firing of gunshots since the year 1975. Also, India's big Iran outreach, how important is strategically Tehran for New Delhi, and the factors at play. The firing incident at India-China border is the first since 1975. It took place 2 days after the meeting between the defense ministers of India and China and 2 days ahead of the Jaishankar-Wang Yi meet in Moscow. New Delhi decided to engage Beijing to seek resolution. But instead, in the outcome, the two countries came up with a 5-point consensus to engage and dialogue further. There was no headway when it came to complete disengagement and de-escalation. In fact, the term that is dearest to New Delhi, that status quo ante, is missing from the joint statement as also from all the source-based information that trickled in from Government of India.
A last-minute bid to avert further escalation of the India-China standoff along the line of actual control in Ladakh. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar held talks with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi in Moscow on Thursday. At the end of the talks that lasted 2 hours, the two countries agreed on a 5-point roadmap. While the consensus document emphasized on the aspect of dialogue and engagement, sources tell India Today that Jaishankar highlighted India's concerns at the massing of Chinese troops with equipment along the LAC. The two ministers agreed both sides should take guidance from the series of measures built by the leaders on developing India-China relations, including not allowing differences to become disputes. Border troops of both sides should continue their dialogue, quickly disengage, maintain proper distance and ease tensions. Both sides shall abide by all the existing agreements and protocol on India-China boundary affairs, maintain peace and tranquility in the border areas. The countries agreed on avoiding any action that could escalate matters. India and China will continue to have dialogue and communication through the special representative mechanism on the India-China boundary question. Most importantly, the ministers agreed that as the situation eases, the two sides should expedite work to conclude new confidence-building measures to maintain and enhance peace and tranquility in the border areas. The two sides, however, have not moved from their earlier position on the reality of the ground situation. The 5-point roadmap reached by S. Jaishankar and Wang Yi also doesn't mention status quo ante, which is restoration of the LAC to its previous state in April before the confrontation started with Chinese deployment of forces.
The other big story is India's Iran outreach. Two important high-level visits within days of each other. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar stopped over in Tehran on their way to and back from the Shanghai Cooperation Organization ministerial meetings held in Moscow. Despite US sanctions, India has decided to engage Tehran with greater vigor than ever before. Why? Let us explain. Iran is a partner of India that is critical from a geostrategic perspective, a counter to Pakistan and India's gateway to Afghanistan, Central Asia and beyond. Iran remains important to the stability of the region. It is one of the counterbalancing forces and despite all of America's efforts, is far from being isolated.
70% of the oil pass from that side, and India oil security is of prime importance. So Iran play a major role on these things, and also you must take in consideration Iran, the population, sizable population, also helps a lot in the for Indian goods as well. And thirdly, which is most important, is that Iran, ever since the revolution of the Islamic Revolution, they've been having a policy of acting east and looking east policy. So they have good relation with India, good relation with China, and with Korea, with Japan, because they knew that the American and the West have been putting extreme pressure on its own foreign policy and on its own to compel Iran and also to disarm Iran, even with not to be a major player in the West Asian affairs.
Now, what are the factors at play? Of late, Iran and China have been having parleys that are obviously of concern to New Delhi. Tehran and Beijing are in talks to strike a multi-billion-dollar strategic partnership agreement spread over 25 years, something that will allow China to tap into Iran's oil and gas resources in return for cooperation in the fields of defense, information technology, as well as other sectors. The deal also includes a major port development project by China on the Strait of Hormuz. It's not just India. Swiss Foreign Minister Ignacio Casas was in Tehran just days before the India visits too. Switzerland has served as an intermediary between Washington and Tehran since 1980, after the collapse of the US-Iran diplomatic relations. Europe too has remained engaged with Tehran despite the US pullout from the Iran deal. And now, with the upcoming elections in the United States of America, all sides are hedging their bets. If the results do not go in favor of Trump, then that could mean the end of the US-sponsored isolation of Iran. India, like many others, does not want to play catch-up while Beijing remains in the good books of Iran. The visits by the defense and foreign ministers of India comes at a time when the ongoing talks between the Taliban and the Afghan government could change the dynamics of the region. India and Iran are keen to see stability in Afghanistan, and the Afghan situation is a discussion point between India and Iran. Meanwhile, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Saeed Khatibzadeh in a Twitter message said, during the talks, the two sides emphasized their resolve to further expand bilateral ties in all aspects. In a tweet, Indian Foreign Minister Jaishankar thanked his counterpart in Iran. A productive meeting with Foreign Minister Javad Zarif during a stopover in Tehran discussed strengthening our bilateral cooperation and reviewed regional developments. Thank him for his gracious hospitality, unquote. For India, the key infrastructure projects are essential for connectivity to Afghanistan and to maintain ground influence to counter Chinese presence in Central Asia. Any increase in the influence of the latter could create an axis with Pakistan, which would be impossible then for India to ward off. India is committed to several projects in Iran, the most important being the Chabahar port. India sees this as the linchpin to its Afghan connectivity. Chabahar would also help India access markets in landlocked Central Asia. This was also seen as India's response to China's development of Gwadar port in adjacent Pakistan's Sindh province. India has also invested in the Chabahar-Zahedan-Mashhad railway line that is likely to open the freight movement between Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan and Indian Ocean. The Zaranj-Dilaram road being developed will provide access to Herat, Kandahar, Kabul and Mazar-e-Sharif, the four major cities in Afghanistan. Many thanks for joining us, Professor Marandi. Very important high-level visits to Iran at a time when we're seeing the sanctions from the United States of America not letting up, but also closer ties between China and Tehran. What was your reading of how India and Iran stand today with the problems that we see exist in the Chabahar projects, particularly the Chabahar-Zahedan railway link?
Well, since Iran and India have always had very close ties and historic ties, I think it is quite understandable for the two countries to continue working together. The United States is obviously bullying India and other countries into distancing themselves from Iran, and Iran's expectation is that independent powers like India, like China, like Russia will ignore the United States and look after their own interests. So Iran's relationship with China, as you alluded to, is evolving in a very positive direction. Its relations with Russia have evolved in a very positive way. And the hope in Iran is that the relationship between Iran and India will continue to remain firm. And despite the pressure coming from the United States to force India not to trade with Iran, not to purchase oil with Iran, that the Indians will continue working with Iran and that the Iranians will continue working with India, whether in Chabahar or anywhere else in the sphere in which the two countries have mutual interests.
Where do you see India placed, given that China's proximity with Iran is going to be a concern for India and the entire connectivity to Afghanistan, the closeness that China and Pakistan share is not something that is not known to Iran?
I think the belief in Tehran is that the United States is trying to divide Asia in order to maintain supremacy. They want a weak China, but they also want a weak India ultimately. They want everyone weak in order for them to remain at the top. So it's sort of divide and rule. In the case of Iran, the United States has been trying to divide India and Iran, but so far they've been unable to divide Iran and China or Iran and Russia. And I think that what the Iranians and the Indians right now are attempting to do is to make sure that their interests are prioritized over the interests of Washington. And because of the historic relationship between the two countries, I think that the feeling in Tehran is that if there is a will to resist pressure from the United States, that actually Iran and India can go much further and much faster than many other countries because of those ties.
A multi-billion-dollar project, 25 years of strategic partnership is what the Iran-China, the two countries are proposing. If that really comes to fructification, what happens then to Iran and Iran's autonomy? We've known about Chinese debt traps. We know how then China will arm twist itself into many projects that maybe India is a part of. How will then Iran work with India? How does this relationship of historical, the historical friendship between the two countries, the close ties between Iran and India, how does that really play out if China, Iran crack that 25-year strategic partnership?
Well, there are two issues here. One is that I am involved in that document. I know the document quite well, and the things that you've been and people have been seeing in the media are not true. There are no figures and numbers in the document. It is a roadmap for a future relationship, and there are absolutely no numbers in it at all. So what you do see in the media is basically speculation. And Iran, as you know, its problem with the United States is because it is a fiercely independent country. And China recognizes this, and taking into account that fact, the Chinese and the Iranians are moving closer to each other. But the same is true with India. If India has the will to improve relations with Iran, the Iranians would be welcoming. The problem that we have is that the Americans are bullying India, they're pushing India. And with regards to Chabahar, the Indians are dragging their feet in the eyes of the Iranians, basically under American pressure, not because that's what the Indian government wants. So the hope in Tehran is that the two countries will sit together and find a way to overcome these obstacles and to prevent the United States from allowing itself to impose its interests upon the interests of other countries like Iran and India and others.
Well, on that note, May, thanks for joining us here on India Today.
Thank you for having me.
While India is embroiled in a tense border dispute on the Eastern Front, things are not that hot on the Western Front with Pakistan. But internally, Pakistan is all set for yet another round of prosecution of its ex-political heads like Supremo of the PMLN, Nawaz Sharif, and PPP leader Asif Ali Zardari. Here's a report.
Pakistan's efforts to tide over the COVID pandemic has found favor internationally. The United States of America revised its travel advisory for Pakistan. It has now been brought down to level 3 category of reconsider travel from the previous level 4 of do not travel category. India continues to be on the level 4 category for travel advisory. But internally, not all is well in Pakistan. While its commercial capital Karachi battles flood, the high and mighty of politics are embroiled in court battles in graft charges. On 9 September, a Pakistan anti-corruption court declared former Premier Nawaz Sharif an absconder in a graft case. The court ordered his arrest through Interpol and detailed report of all his movable and immovable properties to be submitted. The court has directed the Pakistan Foreign Office to execute the arrest warrants against Sharif through the Pakistan High Commission in London. The case against Sharif, known as the Tosha Khana graft case, is about alleged relaxation of rules by ex-Prime Minister Yusuf Raza Gilani for the benefit of former President Asif Ali Zardari and Sharif to buy vehicles gifted by foreign countries. The court also indicted Zardari and Gilani in the same case that allegedly caused a heavy loss to Pakistan's exchequer. The court had asked all accused in the case to be presented in court within 7 days. The PMLN Supremo Nawaz Sharif was not present in the court on health grounds. The former Prime Minister of Pakistan is in London for treatment. But earlier in the year, pictures of Nawaz Sharif taking walks and having tea with family in London went viral on social media, making the authorities doubt his reasons to stay away from Pakistan. Meanwhile, in another court case in Pakistan, a Lahore court sentenced a 37-year-old Christian man to death for having sent blasphemous text messages to a former supervisor at work. 2 years ago, the Asia Bibi blasphemy case in Pakistan made headlines all over the world. It also brought international support for the woman accused and initially sentenced to death. But the Supreme Court of Pakistan had then ruled that she had been framed, and Asia Bibi was set free. Bibi had to flee Pakistan in 2019 due to threats to her life. Now another man has been sentenced to death on the charges of having committed a blasphemy.
Joining me now is Cairo Bureau Chief of the New York Times, Declan Walsh. Earlier, he was the Pakistan Bureau Chief before he was unceremoniously asked to leave Pakistan 7 years ago in a country where he worked for 10 years. He's now written a book on Pakistan and his experience there when he served in the tumultuous days between 2003 and 2013. Many thanks for joining us here on World Today, Declan. Interesting times even now when the politics of the country is just heating up. What do you see and what is your reading of the current developments? Vendetta politics is what you'd call the new set of rounds of prosecution that you see by the government against ex-leaders of the country?
Really, in Pakistan, when it comes to corruption cases, what matters less are the specific accusations, even though they may be true in many cases, and it's more about the pattern. And the pattern is that corruption accusations become highly partisan. All the direction of accusations tend to follow the prevailing political winds, and that's what we're seeing at the moment. Nawaz Sharif is no longer the prime minister. He's facing the brunt of accusations. When Asif Zardari was partly when he was in power, but mostly when he was out, and Benazir Bhutto, they faced them. And, it seems to me there's a couple of ways you can look at this. One is, just as you said, that it's about vendettas that create this kind of circus of accusations that never really seem to lead anywhere, but keep, they're a turbulent dynamic inside the politics.
Now, why do you think these cases seem more politically driven rather than based on investigation?
The problem in Pakistan is that the institutions that are supposed to investigate, prosecute, and judge those accusations are not partial, or they are prone to being influenced by the people in power. And that's why these things are carrying on in the same apparently sort of circular dynamic for so many decades now, often not really coming to any real conclusion. If you look at it, you've got Nawaz Sharif, Asif Zardari, other figures who are constantly featuring in this sort of washing machine of accusations. And at the end of the day, you realize that these corruption investigations, they're not about accountability, they're about eliminating the political opposition. And that seems to be what's going on right now.
Now, Declan, another death conviction in a blasphemy case in Pakistan. Asia Bibi certainly was not the last one. Why do you think it keeps happening in Pakistan?
I've written quite a lot about this in my book, about the blasphemy issue, particularly about the death of Salman Taseer, the Punjab government who was assassinated by his own police guard in 2011. And unfortunately, things have only gotten worse in Pakistan since then on the blasphemy front. It's this law, like in India, was introduced by the British over a century ago, but has really become kind of hyper turbocharged in Pakistan in the last 30 years and is now being instrumentalized by so many people across society, not just clerics, but it's used in elections by politicians, it's used by business people, it has been used by the military. There are all sorts of people who've been abusing this law to settle scores or to gain political advantage. Often, like the gentleman a couple of days ago, people can be sentenced to death. But it's worth noting that in Pakistan, none of these death sentences have ever been carried out, because when they reach the superior courts, the level of evidence to bring a successful prosecution is usually not there. But the danger for people who are accused of Pakistan is in the process. When they're in court, when they're in jail, even when they're awaiting trial, the blasphemy issue has been whipped up so much that they are often in great danger from vigilantes. And the most people who die in Pakistan from blasphemy, it's as a result of that.
Well, thank you, Declan, for joining us here on World Today. Wishing you best for your book, 9 Lives of Pakistan. That's all from me in this week's edition of World Today.
Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.